Before moving further, let's talk about one quick problem that we may experience, and that has to do with animated geometry. So actually, you know what? I'm going to dive back up here a little bit. Let's say that we had some deformation on this torus. So I'm going to press tab and put a mountain stop down. We can just dial the height down a little bit here. And let's say we had an animated offset. So I'm just going to type $T, which stands for time. And that's automatically going to animate the torus for us. So diving inside here, if we look at our scatter, and what I've done is actually dialed the point count down to 100, and I've turned off relax iterations. If you turn on the point number display, you'll see that our points pop around a lot. They're not actually sticking to the animated geometry. And this can cause all kinds of chaos and havoc in your scene. So in order to get this set up correctly, what you want to do is this. Before you do any kind of deformations in your object here, or you can do it afterward, you want to do a rest position. So rest position essentially records the non-deformed state of your object. We can either just wire it in before we deform our object, or we can do it after the fact, where we do something like this, where we've got the non-deformed state and then the deformed state. Oops, got that backwards, sorry. Deformed state and then non-deformed state. So what we would do here is we would actually go and fetch our rest position and use that as scattering. So we want the non-deformed state, and I'm just going to put down an attribute wrangle. So this is something we haven't really dealt with before. This is just a little bit of a code snippet that we can use. And I'm going to insert it right in between here, and let me just enable that here. So if I middle mouse over here, you can see that we have an attribute 3 floats called rest. In an attribute wrangle, it kind of allows us to write little bits of code snippet, and all I need to do is say like my attribute P, which is the attribute for position, is equal to my attribute rest, and then close that bracket. And all I've done is I've reset my position to my rest position here. So I know we haven't done a lot of code, but this is just a very, very short snippet, and that essentially does what we need it to do. Now if I go to scatter, into output attributes, you have to make sure that these two are enabled. We want to then start typing attribute and grab an attribute interpolate. Now here we can see our destination geometry. So that's going to be our destination. And then our source of the attributes to interpolate is going to be our input geometry. Now if I enable that and turn on my point number display, we can see now that the points are actually sticking. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to put that in here. And then of course we can start putting in switches for all this stuff as well, for whether we want to enable sticking or disable that. Because remember, every little node that you put down is going to be a piece of code that needs to be processed and is going to add more time into the evaluation of your node tree. So it's up to you to decide what you want to enable or disable and give the users control of. But for now, let's save where we are. So I'm going to save the node type, and then we'll continue on.